Good morning. This is Karl Dakin, and this is the Successful Funding Show on LinkedIn Live. And we are streaming to LinkedIn, Facebook, and a few other channels out there. So, welcome to the audience. Thank you for joining us here this morning as we talk about raising funding and different topics relevant to that. I have with me as my guest this morning, Adam Kemper with Fig Advertising. And I have to dive into that a little bit more because Adam changed jobs here recently, and I'm trying to catch up with him and find out what he's up to and what he's doing. So, with that, a reminder to the audience we have a chat room to the side. You are welcomed, encouraged, invited. I think of other words here, but you can comment, say hello, ask questions throughout the show. This is an interactive format, and you're all very highly encouraged to become part of the show. So, with that, Adam, good morning. I would like for you to kick this off by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got to be in your current situation or opportunity, however you want to describe that, and then we'll jump into today's topic.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Carl. I appreciate it. I do marketing, and so Real Fig Advertising and Marketing is a full service advertising and marketing firm. I've been in other marketing types of companies doing things like print, radio advertising, things like that. So I've spent a lot of years learning, and now I get the opportunity to look at it from the kind of the quarterback, the head coach position. I liken a lot of those services to, you get a good print campaign. It's like having a star wide receiver. It's all good as long as the quarterback can get him the ball, but those wide receivers turn into divas when they can't catch the ball. And I was becoming a little bit of a diva in a couple campaigns, so now I get the opportunity to be the coach and quarterback and make sure those diva wide receivers catch the ball and get the opportunity to show off how good they are. So it's a very refreshing change. It's a great opportunity to be able to really take the next step in what I think is a natural evolution for me. Because when it comes to why I'm in marketing, I had a dear friend years ago who asked me to tell him a little bit about my life story. And I'm a younger brother of a brother who's just 2 years older than me. We were in Boy Scouts together. We went to high school together, obviously. So there was a lot of overlap in the groups that we hung out with. Well, being the younger brother, you're not exactly naturally brought along. There's a resistance you have to overcome. And I learned as a kid that whining, complaining, moaning, manipulating, forcing, none of those strategies ended up me being there in a way that I enjoyed, because I was there, but nobody really wanted me to be there if I did that, and I knew it. And so I learned how to, as I put it, geek out on what my friends geeked out on, and just be into it with them, have really good conversations about stuff that we shared as interests. And then when it came to go do something, and my brother's like, leave my brother behind, the other guys would be like, nah, bring him along. He's fun. And suddenly I realized I had marketed myself to these people. And my friend told me my superpower is I'm a super little brother. And that need for approval drove my ability to understand what is needed in marketing.
That's great. I like that you're using the term coach. It's one I've adopted for my own use as the capital coach. It seems to be the right description, or the best, and maybe not the optimum, but at least the best description of how I work with my clients, where I don't want to be a cheerleader. I don't want to be an inspirational speaker. My goal is not to rev them up and worse yet, turn them loose in an unrealistic expectation of what's going to happen. And at the same time, a lot of my clients, as might be obvious, simply don't have my long experience in raising capital. So I'm bringing knowledge. And then as we try to deal in the current capital industry, we have to sometimes be more creative rather than less creative. We have to find ways to make things fit together. So I get to design the plays and I get to hand them to my clients and go execute those. But practice, practice, practice. Let's go try this a couple times before we go live, go real. I think coaching is a good term to describe sitting in a position where you can bring your knowledge, your experience, and in my case, and I'm sure in your case, a little bit or a lot of creativity to the table to make stuff happen. So what we and I'm going to apologize a little bit. My voice is a little shot. I did a guest lecture gig for Colorado State University last night into
Nice.
the late hours and had a great time out at the new CSU Spur facilities at the Western Stock Show Complex. Those are just awesome. I got a tour. Adam, if you haven't been out there,
Haven't, but I've
it's
heard great things.
yeah, they've got a building on called Hydro, one called Terra, and then they have the veterinary building. I was looking for the fire building, but I didn't find Fire and Earth. So uh, anyway, it was just good working with the students. I enjoyed doing that where they're so energetic. They have so much energy that I wish I could, use, what I do all the time and get out there to do stuff. But they're bringing forward new product ideas and starting businesses and figuring out how all these pieces work together in an MBA program. And to some degree, it would be great if all small businesses had an opportunity to go through an exercise like that, where it's kind of training wheels time. You don't have to be precise. You don't have to be accurate, and you're not burning a whole lot of money out of the gate while you're figuring out what you don't know. Uh, so, what I wanted to talk about today, because you're in marketing, is helping entrepreneurs, small business owners, tell their story within the context of raising capital. And it's an area where I'm frustrated more often than I'm happy about how pitches are made by small businesses. And I'm going to let you tee off on this subject on what you think might be the basics or the primary rules of engagement here. And we'll talk about that through the remainder of the hour.
Absolutely. I know with that type of presentation, there are other pieces that come into play, but I can tell you from the marketing perspective, you talk about that coach thing, and what kept coming to mind was I have even seasoned businesses where I have to tell them creativity is becoming a liability because big ideas on top of big ideas on top of big ideas don't come with execution points. And nobody's going to invest on something unexecutable. No one wants to try to help serve a business who keeps coming up with creative ideas that don't necessarily serve them, because then they're going to turn around and say, I didn't do my job and work with them. Well, if I listen to every crazy idea you have, we're going to be 6 miles down the wrong road. So one of our jobs as a coach is to bring people back to central questions. One of the biggest things in marketing that people tend to move away from is, what is their actual solution and who does their actual solution serve?
Right.
The idea of how disruptive and industry changing something is only matters if it's in a way that ends up serving the customer to a better outcome that they're going to desire at a higher rate than the competitors that are already in the space. So when we see these presentations and they're full of lofty ideas that don't ever touch on the idea of, tell me the story of who you serve, of what problem you solve for them, and of why they desire a solution in the first place. Otherwise, you're talking around the main issue with big ideas. And uh, so often, in whether it's startup or existing, the smarter they are, the less they're able to speak to the actual problem they solve, because they don't understand it's much simpler than that in the end. They want to you know, complicate it with big ideas. It's like real estate. Um, I know businesses that want to disrupt in that space, but in the end of the day, disruption means A smoother transaction that costs less, that gets me a house in a less stressful environment. How you do that, I don't care.
Well, and it's interesting because all this translates into raising funding where the business is the product. It is what an investor is looking to put money into. And in a similar fashion, you see so many pitches made at pitch competitions. You see it on TV and other places where somebody stands up with a well choreographed song and dance routine, and they talk through everything except what the investor gets out and how they get their money out and what the outcome is. It comes up from so many different angles where if you start the statement of I'm raising funding by telling people I'm looking for money, you've focused everything on yourself and not on the person that you want to work with. And I've seen entire pitches say nothing about how and when and where the investor gets their money back. And it's like, well, then why did you say anything at all? Because you're trying to get them to give you money, and yet you've talked about yourself the entire time.
And that just speaks to it. There's a heart to marketing, which is understanding the central goal before you craft the central message. And in that case, the central goal is to attract an investor who, at the same time as they want to help you, they want a return on that investment and they want to know how that's going to go. So that is absolutely part of telling the story effectively. 100% get that.
Well, and this again is another place where I teach my clients and try to remind myself in case I forgot that when I start off with telling the story, I want to tell it from the perspective of my investor. I don't want to start from my perspective. So the first statement I want to make to an investor candidate is, I've been studying what you're doing, and I think I know how I can be of help to you. And at that point, I'm of service. I'm positioning myself relative to the investor as being a great place to consider and a reason to have a conversation. If I start with a hardcore sales pitch that hits them between the eyes, knocks them on their butt, and they're still reeling from this me type of pitch, uh, the only first thing the investor is going to do when they stand up is run away, and it doesn't matter, how much else is going on. It's really hard because we've got all these books by all these celebrity authors and all this TV and media that tells an entrepreneur that you're the greatest gift to the world, and you should be getting money. People should throw money at you. They set the expectations so high, and it just doesn't happen. So it's interesting to do that. Before we go on, I'm going to recognize some of the people from our audience. This is one of the fun things about doing LinkedIn Live is audience is here and we get to recognize them. So Don Cohen, good morning, Don. Thanks for joining in the show this morning. Don is my mentor in learning how to use LinkedIn and LinkedIn Live as a tool for telling my story. So LinkedIn is currently the biggest tool in my toolbox. Actually, it kind of dwarfs the rest of my toolbox right now. And he offers this service to other people like myself who are going, I don't want to learn everything about LinkedIn. I just want to use it. So, as we talk about as a small business, go surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that have more experience than you, and save yourself the time, pain, frustration of trying to figure everything out for yourself. Just kind of dip into the water, get all the benefit out of it, and go forward. So, Don, thanks for being with us this morning. We have another person, Mirhana from Belgrade. Thanks for making this an international show this morning. I appreciate your listening in, and I hope that my Kansas accent, which seems to follow me everywhere, does not make anything I say beyond understanding. So this is all good. And with that, Adam, let's talk about this. When you start talking with someone at a one-on-one level, how do you see framing that first encounter, that first contact with an alien species known as an investor?
Well, when I'm telling, well, let me actually take one step back from that, because one of the things that I've talked to some folks about is when you're writing your pitch, there are three voices that you tend to see, and you touched on it perfectly. You've got the person who's investing, which is voice one. You need to speak to them. You've got voice two, which is the customers you serve. You need to speak about them. And voice three is that self part. And I tell them minimize. If you say it once at the end and you use, I would like to work with somebody who represents these values, but that is pretty much the only place I recommend people, when they're putting together the words they're going to use inside of a pitch presentation, focus on voice one first, voice two second, and read through and eliminate everything possible from voice three, because you should not be saying I, me, we, us. It's the wrong direction for the conversation, for the copy to go. So I tell people to come prepared. It's not meant to be scripted to the point of uncomfortableness, but have your talking points and know who's the talk, what your talking points are to voice one, the investor. Know what your talking points are to about voice two, the client, and be able to quickly be able to come up with those. Because the other piece is having that rehearsed, having that marketing copy committed to memory is key, because you know it as much as anybody. There may be a day where they happen to go to a networking luncheon and there's a random guy who brought a VC friend, and that VC friend's never coming back to that networking lunch, and it was a one-time favor, but they said, come spend 10 minutes with me after the meeting and tell me about what you're doing. That's your soft pitch. If you don't get them in 10 minutes with your story, you don't get to give the full length.
Right. It's another common error of small businesses where the first contact, they hand you a slide deck, they hand you an offering memorandum. They've given you like hours of homework to do, and you haven't yet even determined if the person cares, knows, or wants any more information. So they use, we have so many cliche terms, and I'm adopting as many of them as possible, but you put your toe in the water before you jump in the water. And the biggest mistake, and this is one of my cliches, the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make in raising funding is talking to people who will never invest. Every minute you spend pitching, talking, engaging someone who never under any circumstance is going to write you a check is time wasted. And if there's the one asset above all for an entrepreneur that is in short supply, it's time. So I work with my clients. We do what I call FBI style profiling of investor candidates, trying to figure out who cares, who has the greatest self interest, who aligns with, as the second voice, as you described it. You've got what you're doing with your customers. If you're making your customers happy and they're buying more products, then the business is going to succeed in almost all cases. And that success then creates a spinoff, or it creates all these other benefits that can occur. And I have to figure out which of these benefits match up with the person in voice one, which is the investor. Do they care about all they care about is making a profit and getting their share of the profits? Then that's the drum I'm going to beat. If they go, no, I like the fact you're selling more products because I'm a supplier to you. And if the more you grow, the more I sell to you, the more profit I make that way, then I've got to talk about my sales and where they're going. But actually, I want to talk more about how much profit they're going to make in selling me more stuff, because that's what they care about. And understanding each of these people you're talking to, doing that type of due diligence is the prerequisite to a successful pitch. And yet we see so many times entrepreneurs standing up on a stage talking to a group of people that they don't know, making a pitch that applies to no one specifically. It's a commodity. It's a very generic pitch. And the result of that is that, I've sat in the audience and I listen to the pitch. And I go, I wonder who they're talking to. They're not talking to me. And so I don't care. I have found that if you don't talk to someone about who they are, what they care about, they don't think you understand. And that lack of understanding kills your credibility. So
That's
where do
the
you go?
heart of that marketing voice one. Absolutely. Because it's understanding what they want and explaining how what you're doing and getting the funding from them gives them what they want. And it's more than an elevator pitch. It's a researched elevator pitch, because it takes
Yeah.
that. I love that FBI investigator profiling. I mean, I just jokingly talk about it from cyber stalking the people you want to work with, but with this day and age of, I use Sales Navigator with LinkedIn. I can get a lot of things through. I've used some other tools out there. You can get a lot of information about an individual and get to that point where you can see these are the types of things that they talk about regularly. This is the type of wisdom they share. So align it with that. Make sure that what you're offering has a value proposition that aligns with the values that they talk about. It's marketing is an act of trying to socially engineer an outcome to your benefit. The more data that we as marketing companies can get about who someone is and what their behaviors are and what their buying habits are, the more high value marketing to them is, as long as your product fits into that same buying behavior. And so it's like, automobiles are a great example, because everybody gets that an auto shop wants to work with certain makes and models. Not everybody works with European cars.
Right.
So with them, it's really simple to say, I only want to pick cars of this age, make, and model. Well, it's not actually that different when you say, I only want to research business VCs who are in this region, who invest in this size business and have made this many investments in the last few years, because I'm sure you know them better than I do, but there are sites out there with all of this information available. So, and also from a marketing standpoint, instead of waiting for it and hoping, because that's what, when you're standing up in front of those rooms making the generic pitch, it's pitch and pray. And that's a lot of those strategies. Turn the tables. If you know somebody invests in a lane that you're in, how do you get their attention and market to them and target them? Because if they hear what you do and it makes that impact, there's no pray to it. That's the guy you want to invest in you, and you're speaking that person's language. That's that whole social engineering. Now their brain says, this business is the kind of business I invest in. They get the idea. Let me investigate further. Now their mind is actually going from convincing, which is a whole process, to verification, which is a way easier process, because their brain is convinced and their skepticism just has to be eliminated, which is a much shorter process. So I'm sure you can speak to it, but FBI investigating profiling is such a deep place to go to start. So much marketing happens before you do a dang thing in a interaction.
Right. Yeah. Once I start talking, I'm kind of putting on my sales hat very carefully. Uh, but to me, yeah, I see most of marketing as I view it is understanding who I'm talking to and why they care and whether they care enough that I should even bother them with conversation. When we use the term disruptive, I use it in the sense of I want to disrupt this person's thinking of look at me to look at yourself, how I can help you, how I'm going to be a member of your team. I'm going to be the secret sauce that gets you where you want to go. And when they start viewing me as an asset, as an ally, as somebody they want in their community, a relationship they would like to have, as you say, I'm 90% down the road on the sales process because I skipped over most of the reaction you get is this person real? Do I trust them? Are they good people? All these kinds of things which are in barriers and stand in the way. And once they go, oh, they care about me, they want to help me, now, sure, come on, let's talk about it. Now, we may not get to a deal, but I'm going to have a much richer conversation. I may get to an investment. But at the same time, if I haven't done my due diligence, I'm talking to people I don't know. I don't know if they're ever going to care, and I'm wasting my time almost all the time. Um,
It always
yeah, it
amazes me when poor people end up talking to poor people about getting money. It's like the heart is there, but did you ever verify the part where they actually invest?
Yeah, so I have three keys for getting to successful funding. One is you have to know the person you're talking to, and that's really hard in most capital campaigns where you have to reach beyond the people you know to the people you don't know. So now you're trying to figure out how do I create an instantaneous, instant coffee type of relationship where somebody goes, okay, fine, I do need to talk to this person. Well, the only way I know to penetrate, that barrier is to talk about them from the very first minute with enough intelligence about them to understand why they should care and how I can help them. If I don't have that information, I can't get there from here because all these barriers will remain in place. So it's interesting to see how you start the conversation. I like the profiling thing because quite often I may not be able to point to a specific person, but I can find out this one will benefit for this reason from the success of this business. And if I can figure out one person who fits in that category, then anyone else who has the same attributes could be in this larger group. And then when I'm starting to design the capital campaign, I'm looking at size of groups, I'm looking at access to the groups, how easily can I get to them, talk to them, and how strong is this disruptor impact I'm going to have when I talk to them. So if I could get somebody to go, oh, I need to talk to them about that, then I know I'm in the right place. If I get a yawn because I've seen that, done that, they look like everybody else is up on the pit stage and I can't tell the difference, then I don't care. And that's not going to get me where I want to go.
Well, and that's so key because that looking like everybody else on the pitch stage is the heart of something that people need to embrace in marketing as a whole. Like there are a million businesses just like you. I don't care who you are listening right now. I don't care what you do. You have dozens and dozens and dozens of competitors who do everything that you do. So how do you tell your story that makes an impact, that you do something different? It is so rare that somebody truly does something different. And it's there are twists, there are parts of everything that everybody finds to be more important. As a marketing agency, my team, we're built by salespeople. So we're a marketing agency built by salespeople. That means leads are number one for us because we have lived in the age-old battle between the sales team and the marketing team. Sales thinks marketing's an idiot because they don't know what they're doing. Marketing thinks sales is an idiot because they don't use the leads right. It's back and forth. But the reality is, my agency can leverage that understanding and say, we understand why salespeople don't like their marketing department, and we can create campaigns to create true lead generation marketing. Now, it's not that anybody else couldn't do what we're doing, but I know the organizations that I'm targeting, that's a big piece of what has been the problem. They've grown, they've built out a marketing department. The sales team doesn't like them, doesn't respect them, doesn't think they do well. And it's become more of a hindrance to success than an ability to achieve it. And so we see that in different areas of marketing, including that startup phase, because it's like if you don't understand that slight differential, you're talking about a feature and a benefit that you handle different. And a person who's seen these pitches before is going, hey, I've seen it before. This isn't actually different. This is actually the same thing.
Yeah, so before we jump on that point and dive a little deeper, I want to do a recognition to Harvey Tuck, who's a friend and mentor of mine. Harvey is in London. He works to help franchise local coffee shops. We had a very interesting discussion yesterday morning, early, late for him, early for me, on how you go about raising funding for franchisees and helping them through the journey of getting started and getting enough funding to open their own business and work within a franchise relationship. And going back to Emiliano, who's on the show with us this morning, this is one of my friends and partners where we are storming the castle right now with a new customizable artificial intelligence avatar, which I hope to bring onto my show in the future and have it as maybe one of my guests who's sitting there in a digital format alongside us warm body people who are here. It's really it's amazing stuff that we're doing with AI that is built on years of work. And Emiliano has been at the bleeding edge so long that he has finally got to a point where he can do some stuff that it's just almost instantly recognizable that this has value. You don't have to explain it anymore. Just ask the avatar and it'll tell you just how smart it is. But you can personalize it like I've done. I have mine, which we're training up. We're calling it CAP after Capital Coach. But I've taken all the newsletters that I've created on LinkedIn and all my workbooks for my workshops and all the articles, and we've trained the avatar to have all that information at its, I guess you call it digital fingertips, and you can ask it questions. So it's like a just-in-time learning system. I don't need to go to school for a semester and sit through all these courses. I have a question right now that I need to answer. Like yesterday, I was trying to figure out how to get TurboTax to send my tax filings to the feds and get through a firewall with Norton. And I wasn't able to fix that. And every FAQ on the website wouldn't fix it, and every expert on the website couldn't fix it. So I'm spending the remainder of the day licking stamps and throwing out my tax returns in the mail. Uh, but coming back to this topic that we've been talking about is um, it seems obvious to me that if I want to sell something, I should be talking to the customer. And in this case, the customer is an investor. And one of the points you made is the need to stand out. And this is so true. And it's particularly true in raising money because almost everybody's been trained to talk about return on investment. That the one metric that they throw out to an investor is, hey, I can make money on the money you give me. It will appreciate over time. You're going to make money on this. And yet, what they stop and don't think about is the fact that every other person who offers the same level of return on investment is considered equal in the eyes of an investor. And if you tell someone I can make 20% per year, then at that particular point, every other business who says they can make 20% per year is equal right here. And worse yet, anyone who claims they can make more than 20% per year, you've just told them you're inferior to those other propositions. But Adam, I am going to have to disagree with you on one point. You said there's tens of thousands of people competing for the money. But Adam's only talking about the businesses within 10 miles of your house.
That's
I
true.
take, I take the position in today's international internet global market, everyone on the planet, all 8 billion people are competing for the money of that investor. So it's not just other businesses, but it's charities, it's the government who wants
Mhm.
to tax us and use it for hopefully good things. Um, it's your spouse who says, no, no, we need to take a vacation this year. What are you doing dumping money into a startup company of some kind? And all these things are competing for the money of the investor. And not only that, but another important issue when we're seeing the capital market in its current chaotic state, we've seen a 75% reduction in investments over the last 2.5 years as a lot of the large monies got stuck in their investments and can't get out. So everybody's competing for a smaller set of money. And one of the things that you compete against is doing nothing. The investor can go, there's a phrase we use called dry powder. That means I have money sitting idle, not doing anything. And as much as investors like to put their money to work, there are days when they get up in the morning and go, it's just too nuts out there. I'm not doing anything today. And if you make a pitch to me today, you've got to convince me to come off the bleachers, come out on the playing field and put my money to work. And some days it's really, really hard to make that particular pitch.
I had an auto repair shop. I've had an auto repair shop client for years. This guy is hilarious. He makes it so clear to me what I'm competing against. Every time we come in for his quarterly review, he has another old car on his computer screen. And he tells me, I could be buying this car with what I'm spending on you. You better show me that I get the calls. So your point is well made, because in some cases I'm competing with an old junker that I have to prove that I can bring phone calls to their business, or else they're going to choose to buy a car because that's what they really want to buy. So it's not even necessarily that they're going to invest in something that's competitive even. You're right. It could be, I want to go on vacation and I just don't feel the market's safe enough. So you really have to have the understanding of your value proposition down, because that gives you the ability to do the pivot needed to understand where they are and what you're up against. If you don't know what your, not just elevator pitch, but that deeper value proposition statement of what you bring to an investor and what you're bringing to the table, and so say you have 6 talking points, knowing which 3 this person's going to really care about and which one's going to be the, and being able to articulate and pivot within that stack of talking points is even more key. And that can't happen if you're shooting from the hip and working from the top of your mind. You,
No, and to that, when I do profiling, I typically will find as many as a dozen different profiles of people who are going to benefit from the success of a business. But I want to pick the top three. And those top three may be so different one from another that I can't use a single pitch. I need to walk in with 3 pitches. And as you say, before I even start to talk, I need to know which pitch I'm going to be using on this particular profiled investor candidate. Because if I start off talking to you about something you don't care about, you're confused and you think, I don't know what I'm doing, and my credibility is blown. Yeah,
well,
right
and,
at
and
that moment.
to your question about getting them off the bench, you do that. You just glued their butt to the bench. They
Yeah,
just felt justified because the first thing they heard was, well, this is completely not for me. And I wanted to stay on the bench and see, this is why I shouldn't even have done this. And that's all they're thinking the rest of the time. Whereas you disrupt in the way you talked about, and you give them something that makes them go, wait, this is a value that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see at this time, but I don't pass value, and this sounds like something I need to take a closer look at. And so it's really key, especially with people sitting on the bench more and more these days, about knowing what your lead off is going to be. And really, I have isms that my friends like to call my Adamisms, and one of my isms is, it's amazing how long it takes to make an overnight success. And all of this prep is the prep that you do to become an overnight success, because it's that one time. And and I'm gonna tell this, and you may have a different view, but you're gonna mess up about half the time. You're gonna pick the wrong one. You're gonna do all the research in the world, and they're just gonna not resonate with it for whatever reason. It's just
Yeah,
it's
but Adam, right now the statistics are that if you pitch to an angel group, a group of angel investors, wealthy individuals that meet the accredited investor standard, you're going to fail 98% of the time. So if you get to 50% success rate, just think about the multiplier you've achieved,
right.
uh, and think how much money you saved. Instead of failing 98% of the time, you're only failing 50% of the
Amen.
time.
And it's because you prepared. I mean, it's the old adage with sports. You know what they call somebody who misses the ball 7 out of 10 times?
An expert, a pro.
A Hall of Famer. That's a 300
Yes. Oh,
batting average. If you miss the ball 7 out of 10 times, you're a Hall of Famer in baseball. So, it's
well,
not
yeah,
about
I'm
letting
glad you
those
I'm
learning
glad you qual I'm glad you
from
qualified
those.
it was baseball because I thought you were talking about football, and I was thinking about a kicker missing 7 out of 10 times. So, the
Yeah. No,
but
in
no,
baseball.
in baseball, which, is a sport that I much enjoy, and I wish our local Colorado Rockies the best this year despite their very terrible start.
Go
Anyway,
Cubs, go.
yeah. Yeah, but no, it's interesting that if you can just use your time that much more efficiently, if you can do anything along that line, you have improved your efficiency in getting out and telling your story. That means you've saved half of your marketing budget. It's another way of looking at it. And so many times when I'm talking with people, they tend to again default to banks and wealthy individuals as sources of capital. And in those two cases, they're legitimate sources if you match with them, if you can meet their criteria, and as we've been talking about, if you can stand out from everybody else who's hitting them up for money because they don't have enough money for everybody. It's a competition any way you look at it. And so as we go through this whole thing, it's like standing in the shoes of your investor candidates, understanding what they care about. And sometimes, as you mentioned, they may not even know that you're bringing this benefit to them. You may have to go through a little bit of an educational point, but as long as you're talking about them, they'll wait and listen until you get through that first point. And if there is an interest, if they do want to talk more, then you have a second meeting. You do not have to, and in almost every, even though I use instant funding as the title of my newsletter because that's what everybody wants, it's usually a long haul relationship building type of proposition to get through. Even in a pitch is 4 5 or 6 different stages as they gather information, they analyze it, verify it, negotiate it, and finally decide that yes, this is what they want to do. You can't get there in a single meeting unless, as I call it, a slam dunk meeting where this person's been hunting for you like the Holy Grail, and they finally found you, and you meet all their requirements.
Well, there, but there's also things that you touched on that from a marketing mindset, I think is smart strategic thinking that not enough people look at. For example, a print business, a print and direct mail marketing company. Um, if they found out that, say they're in an acquisition phase where they're picking up other small businesses. Um, I have talked to a couple supplier companies who are very large paper companies, and they have expressed willingness to invest in the right print company who is their client, because they get, as you said, if we can help them have that infusion of capital to grow, their orders will grow from us. Yes, we'll get the return on the equity, but more importantly, we're going to help our client, who's already a large client, become even a larger client, and that benefits us even more. So that strategic thinking of how can we align with somebody, and there are always people in spaces where you can look and say, all right, they're acquiring other paper companies, they're consolidating. Perhaps that consolidation could come with an investment into something related that would benefit them. It's not a full acquisition, but if they're spending money, you've got a great sign that there's at least the opportunity. So from a marketing mindset, I again think that's a brilliant way to identify key traits. And again, it's so much easier when you're selling the idea of multiple benefits, the traditional investor benefit, but that vendor value is so much bigger than people realize, because you also know you never have to worry about that client going to another paper company again. They're ours. I have equity.
They have a stake in the game in your success, and there's so many different ways that you can leverage that strategic relationship to help you do other things. And they might do co-op advertising. They may find that they don't have a face to the public that is recognizable, and they want that face, and you, as their customer, becomes that face, where you walk into the print shop and on the wall it says, "We are a proud customer of XYZ paper company." And the person goes, "I didn't even know XYZ existed." And so they have no brand recognition at that level. But if they work with each of the print shops that they sell to, then they are reaching through them, so the customers are getting so it's interesting
Mhm.
to break it down, because the whole thing becomes way more complex, but it also becomes so much more logically rational. How do I get from this point to that point? Instead of wandering blindly, hoping that you're going to bump into the right person at the right time, you're going like, today we're going to go talk to Joe or Sally. They care about me for this reason. If I can help them understand that and we can agree on the value proposition that my success brings to them by helping them do what they want to do, then we should have a relationship. It may not be an investor relationship, but all these relationships combine to become part of a community. So before we start working towards the back end of the show today, there's another concept I want to bounce off of you. I'm working with Don Cohen and a number of other groups where we're talking about building communities. And I'm currently defining community different from somebody within 5 miles of my backyard to anyone in the world who has common values, common belief, and has an ability to offer what you call a reciprocal value proposition. If I do something, it should help them. If they do something, it should help me. And if I need help, something specific, I can reach out, I can do a shout out and go, "Hey, I'm doing something, at this time or place, and I could use some help." And I have a reasonable expectation that they're going to be able to stand up and help me at that time. So I become members of a community. Some people use the word tribe. What are your thoughts on this larger concept?
I'm actively a part of it as well. In fact, I participate in a marketing marketing group that's worldwide. We've got folks in England, we've got folks all over Europe and the United States, and it's just that. It's a great place to learn from each other. It's a great place to have resources and tools. Um, wisdom of all colors and shapes and lanes. And while it all ties back to marketing, it has been huge for me. I mean, we literally just had a conversation about online events, and I brought to the table my complaints, and by the end of it, I had a completely different view that, one of the biggest downfalls of online events in the post-COVID era is that people try to run the same event that they do online as they did in person. And so I think it speaks to what you're saying about community building. You have to have something that facilitates the right thing. And there is a special mix to it that has to be managed. But at the same time, I think it's a wave that is growing and growing. And we're seeing something that the internet always promised but never quite delivered on. which was this global community effect. I mean, our communities were often still online but local. And one of the things that I think is a true benefit coming out of COVID was that we connected with people outside of our local area because we all had a unifying event. We were all sitting in our house trying to figure out what's next. And we were able to really look at somebody in England and say, "You too, right on. Tell me about your version of this experience." And that at the heart of community is what brings people together. So I think there was this really cool moment that we're benefiting from with online communities truly becoming worldwide through shared
Yeah,
experience.
it's part of the reason I decided to work with Don Cohen on this LinkedIn Live show is I had tried podcasting, and as much as I liked it, I wasn't sure that anyone was able to hear me or listen to me. And I so much like this interactive experience. And a shout out again to Emiliano. He's offering live demos. He's part of my community, part of my crowd. And kind of my long-term metric, and I don't have it well defined yet, is I want to build a crowd of people who support small businesses in funding, whether they're a vendor of a tool like Emiliano's AI avatars or your services, Adam, in helping them frame their story and complete some kind of a strategy for their marketing instead of just flailing away. I think that bringing all these people into a common group and sharing our information and being in what I call standby mode to come help whenever it's needed, this type of community will be much more effective in helping small businesses. And as we work to develop best practices and common shared practices between the various different types of services and the different types of products, we'll all benefit from that. And so I've been very pleased with the progress of this show. I think this is show number 10 or something like that. So I guess this is my 10th anniversary, might be the best way to describe that. But um, these are the things in building community that I see that the internet is in some way still yet to realize its full potential. And at the point where we can be a member of a community, and yet each of us can be an individual within that community, so we can custom interact with everybody, yet at the same time we can act at a level where everybody can also benefit as a community. That's where I see the optimum achieved here.
Well, and I see there are so many platforms that changed the interaction because again, the shared experience I think is so much stronger than we realize because you look at it, it's like uh, Twitch is a platform that a lot of people use to like stream themselves gaming, but there are huge communities of gamers on there, and my son is into his games and he's 17-year-old boy, so but he has his whole group of people, and I'm like, so who are these people? He's like, oh, one of them's a guy who likes the same game in Michigan, and another one's in England, and another one's this, and it's like borders really mean less now because it's affinity communities. To your point, it's like we're looking for the shared likes, the shared affinities, and we're moving past some of the artificial boxes of, I'm an American who lives in Colorado who does these activities, so my community is full of people who do this. This is changing it completely because you can have niche affinity communities as well, where it's like, I, my daughter, my oldest or my youngest daughter, and I watch pro wrestling. And we have joined an online community of parents and kids across the world who like pro wrestling. And it's things like that where I wouldn't have ever thought about connecting in that way. But there's so much more in that community space now where it's like, well, let's find other like minded people to talk about this stuff and be in community with them because there's also a need for us to have an interaction that isn't combative, that isn't hostile.
Mhm. You're right. With all the news and the commentary that is very confrontational, antagonistic, it's negative. It's best to have a greater than a majority of your time taken up doing something positive and productive.
Well,
Uh,
even
and
even beyond the politics, let me say
yeah,
that this is more of a general statement because I have dear friends in sports talk radio, and you can't talk about the Broncos without somebody wanting to yell. It's like, can we just discuss it? Can we just have a conversation? So a lot of these communities as well have that psychoanalytic piece of people of reasonable heart and mind who do X, or a passionate fans group. Great. You want to have arguments with everybody, be passionate, do that. But it allows for you to understand what the community is about better and make those decisions and say, I want to be in a community that is discussing, not arguing.
yeah. No, as I'm looking at it, every small business who wants to raise money should be building a community. And this is part of a series I'm currently doing. I put out a daily newsletter on LinkedIn called Instant Funding. It is more of a theoretical goal than a realistic goal, but nonetheless, that's where we all want to get to. And talking about all the aspects of a community and how you interact and build a community. And I'm finding that there's fragments here and there out there in the knowledge world, so to speak, that I want to weave together and get much better at this as I move forward. And then doing a program like this with my successful funding show is having people like yourself share your thoughts and your background and show how we can work together in a conversation, which is an example of how we may work together as a team and working with a small business and raising funding. So these are all good things. And before we get done for today, I put up our little thing at the bottom of the screen. Um, Talking about this, but I will be a speaker next week at the Super Crowd online event that's put on by Devin Thorpe. And we're going to have 2 days of nonstop experts, 100 plus experts talking about crowdfunding as a form of investment. We'll have people like Bill Huston, who's talking about doing it in local community building. We'll have people talking about it from an angel capital standpoint. My contribution is on next Thursday, where I'm going to be talking about customer focused crowdfunding, where I design investment offers from a small business to their customers as their primary target. So these are all things that we'll be talking about. And if you go to my instant funding newsletter, I've got a discount coupon in there that you can get to reduce the price, which isn't that high, but nonetheless, cut those dollars down, save them for something else that you want to spend your money on. So as we wind up today, Adam, as usual in these conversations, we start kind of over here and we go over here and come back again. Any last thoughts or summarizing thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience today?
I would just emphasize once again, know what the value of what you're bringing to the table is on multiple levels and be prepared to first seek to understand and then share. Otherwise, show up and throw up will kill your funding dreams.
So yeah, I'm going to think about using that phrase, show up and throw up. I don't know if I'm going to go there or not, but you're the marketing guy, so I'll give you total credit for that phrase and we'll see how well it sells.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you to the audience. Thank you for everybody being with us today on the Successful Funding Show. The whole purpose of this show is to have conversations like this and talking about raising funding. Most of my focus is on small businesses, some startups, some who are scaling up and growing to the next level. But a lot of what we talk about is also applicable to a charity fundraising program, something that's a community project. You kind of go through the same drill. You still need to know who you're talking to. You still need to be able to explain to that person why it's of value to them. in order for you to have any expectation that you're going to get from them that they're going to do something. So this is not limited just to small businesses, but to anyone who's raising funding anywhere in the world. I found a lot of these things may be difficult to translate into another language, but the concept is still good where we happen to go. So with that, this will bring us to the end of today's show. Thank you, Adam, for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a very enjoyable conversation, and thank you to everybody who is here attending. I really appreciate the opportunity.